Hi, are you thinking about moving or relocating to the Cypress, Texas area? If you are, then you've come to the right place. My name is Janice Emoisey, and today I'm going to share with you 12 tips on how you can become a pro at the home buying process. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, if you don't have pen and paper, now will be a good time to go ahead and get some. If you miss anything, just rewind the video and we can come back. So, tip number one, you must find a really good realtor. And what do I mean by that? Hopefully, the realtor you find has some knowledge of how mortgages works. If you get a realtor that understands how that side of the aisle works, if your loan is in jeopardy for any reason, and the realtor can detect that, they can tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, the underwriter is not getting back in touch with us. They're not calling us. We don't know what's going on. I think we need to set up a plan B just in case." Because believe it or not, there have been buyers who have gone to the title company. We use title companies in Texas and not attorneys who've gone to the title company and found themselves without a loan. Why? Because the lender never got back in touch with them. They never got word that they actually was approved for a loan. The title company was consistently reaching out, and so was the agent. However, no one bothered to get with the loan officer to find out what is going on or to even put a plan B in place. So another good reason for getting a good realtor is most realtors know a lot of vendors. If you need help with getting a list of inspectors, for example, or getting a list of home warranty companies, maybe you don't want to go with the home the insurance company you have that does your car, but you can use the same company to do your homeowner's insurance. But there's like a whole plethora of things that an agent can do. The other thing you would need to do is, especially if you're relocating to Texas and you're looking to buy, say, a new construction home, you want to make sure that you register the name of your realtor on the registration form, because if you do not do that, some builders will not allow you to circle back and put the realtor's name on the registration form. And remember that the builder's salesperson does not represent you, they represent the builder. Let me repeat that. The builder's salesperson does not represent you, they represent the builder's interest. And I say that because my husband was a custom home builder, and I used to be a mortgage broker at one point in time. And I'll tell you the difference between mortgage broker and banks in a minute. But the next stage when you're building, you have to get inspections done. And yeah, I know that the builders already having inspections done, but sometimes those contractors, for example, can go back. I had a client to have an inspection done, and the contractors accidentally kicked one of the little tin things on top of the roof that was connected to the hot water tank. And what ended up happening was, because they got the home inspected, the inspector said that had they not done that, then carbon monoxide would have leaked out of that uh, tank into the bedrooms upstairs. So you never know, even though the inspections are going well, you just never know what happens during the course of the contractors going back to do different things on behalf of the builder. It's always wise to get an inspection done. And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, wait until 1 year you've moved into the house." The builder is your friend. They're happy with you. The GC, the general contractor, everything is going great. They love you. You got their cell number. As soon as you close on that new home, they're done. They're moving on to the next batch or group of people whom they have to now service. And they're going to point you to a website that if you have any issues or you need something done, now they're no longer having that really, I hate to say it, close relationship with a lot of these builders. So you want to make sure you get everything done while you have their full undivided attention. So just make sure, tip number one, you want to get you a really good real estate agent who can help you. And if you're relocating from out of town, you're probably thinking, where in the heck am I going to find a good realtor? Well, you can go to this website called hard.com. And on hard.com, there's a link that says agents. You can click on it. And there would be a lot of agents here in the state of Texas. Believe me, there's no shortage of agents. You will be able to find one, but it's really good to find one that understands how mortgages works, because you never know when you need to put a plan B in place. And there are some cues that happen, some things that are going on that the agent will be able to understand and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I think it's time for us to take a copy of this file over to a different lender and get a second opinion and get something lined up just in case they come back and tell us they don't have a loan for me. And that has been known to happen. So you don't want that to happen to you. Okay, let's move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is you want to find a good lender. Now, I know a lot of times people want to go with lenders outside of the state. Now, Texas is its own country, believe it or not. I know people say that all the time about Texas. It's like you could be driving to get out of Texas, it'd be 7 hours, and you never even leave Texas until finally on hour 10. Now you're out of the state of Texas, and you wonder what the heck was that all about. But anyway, I digress. So you want to get a good lender, preferably a local lender. And what do I mean by that? You have your mortgage brokers. I used to be a broker. And then you have your big banks. The difference between the two is mortgage brokers, that's all they do. They do loans all day long. It's kind of like the difference between a dentist and an endodontist. I guess the people that does the root canals. I think I got that right. Anyway, people that do root canals, that's all they do all day long. They're the expert. That's their specialty, doing root canals. Whereas a dentist, on the other hand, they don't do root canals all day long. That's not their expertise. So the same thing with lenders. When you have a mortgage broker, that's all they do all day long is loans, all day long, all different types of loans. They have all different types of lenders that they have access to with all these different products. So if you don't fit in one, you may fit in another. If you don't fit in that one, they have several different products that they can get your loan approved with. Whereas the lender, the big bank on the other side, they're one trick pony. They just have one type of mortgage product. That's it. If you don't fit in, they try to twist and turn you and put you into the little square peg. If you don't fit, then it's like, oh, well, too bad, so sad. They can't do the loan for you. But just know that all lenders are different. No two lenders have the same exact product. Most lenders have their own different type of product that they can offer you. That's why when a lot of times when people are purchasing new construction homes, and if their lender can't do the loan, the reason they want you to start out with the builder's lender is because they have all these incentives. They have closing costs. They may pay for all your closing costs. They may pay for the OTP, which is the owner's title policy. And they're saying, hey, if you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you go use your own lender and you can, well, guess what? We're not going to pay the OTP. Well, if you're buying a $500,000 house, that can be several $1,000s. And they say, we're not going to pay it. And they don't have to pay it. They can say, well, we're not even going to pay your closing costs, even though they were going to give you $26,000 or 6% towards closing costs. And a chunk of that money you can use to help buy down your interest rate. They'll go, we're not even going to give you that if you're going to use an outside lender. So it's, again, the realtor be able to help you, make those decisions back and forth, especially when you can use what the builder is going to give you in terms of what the fees are going to be versus what your lender will give you. What you can do is a comparison to see, are the fees going to be cheaper with me using my lender? And then are the fees going to be more expensive with me using the builder lenders? But believe it or not, a lot of these builders are buying the interest rate down. So that's a positive. Whereas when you go with your typical lender, the rates may start out maybe 2 points higher. So you definitely want to look at those two things and take those into consideration. So finding a good lender, hopefully locally. Sometimes people would get lenders off of a 1-800 number. They just call a random 1-800 number, randomly get pre-approved. And now they close from between 9 to 5, or they may be on California time zone. We're on Central time zone, so California is behind us, which means they're not open in time. So when we're waiting for them to open, when they're waiting to send the paperwork in, it can get a little bit confusing. Whereas if it's local, it's easy to be in contact with those lenders. It's easy to get them to text you, to talk to them. It's so much better and easy because most people outside of the state of Texas, they don't understand how we do business in Texas. Like I said, Texas is its own country. So you want to be aware of that. So get yourself a good lender. Tip number 3, you need to have your upfront out-of-pocket fees. What do I mean by upfront out-of-pocket fees? This is what I mean about upfront out-of-pocket fees. Number 1, You want to have this money ready and available, already sitting in your bank account. The first fee is going to be your earnest money. Typically, earnest money is 1% of the sales price. So if it's a $500,000 house, we're talking about 1%. That's on a resale. Resale typically is 1%. If we're talking about new construction, it depends on the builder. Some new constructions, people may say, put a down payment to hold everything of 5,000 or 10,000 or 8,000. It just depends on which builder you're going to. But if we're talking about a resale home, it's typically 1% of the sales price. So that's your earnest money. You also need to come up with your option fee. The option fee is a little bit cheaper. Again, option fee can be used as a form of negotiation. If you're coming across multiple offers on a property, you can use it as a tool to make your offer look better. Let me give you an example. Let's say there's another person that's trying to purchase the same home you're trying to buy, but we're talking about a resale home, not a new home build, because with new home builds, it's a lot easier because you pick out your lot, pick out the plan you want, they'll build that house. Or it can be an inventory home, something that's already built. No biggie, you put your down payment down, no competition. But if we're talking resale home and it's maybe a year or two older, then what you end up doing is for the option fee, let's say one offer, they submit their offer on their end. They're not going to tell you what they submitted until later. And typically, because I know they submitted at maybe $100, $150 or $200 for the option fee, they can say we have multiple offers. That's what the other side would say. So let's say on your side, one of the things you could do, one of the strategies you can use is the option fee, because the option fee money goes directly to the seller to do whatever they want. It's non-refundable whether you buy the house or not buy the house. However, if you do buy the house, you can request that that option fee money be applied towards your closing costs. So back to the strategy. So let's say you want to submit an offer and I say, okay, since typically the option money is $100, and we know that we've done comps and the houses basically stating that it's in the range that homes typically sell for of that type in that neighborhood. Instead of offering an option fee of say $150 or $200, maybe you do $1,000 or maybe you do $2,000. But again, this will have to be money that you can stand to lose just in case. And the only way you would lose it is if you decide to have an inspection done and you back out of the whole deal. If you don't back out, that $2,000 or $1,000 will be applied towards your closing costs. So it's a win-win. The only way you can lose is if you say, I had this inspection done, this report came back, and there are just too many darn things wrong with this house, and I definitely don't want to get it. And that's fine. That's perfectly up to you to do that. So that's just a strategy. So the money you need to have upfront out of pocket, because this is tip number 3, the money you need to have is, again, earnest money. You need to have your option fee money. You need to have inspections done, right? So you need to be able to have access to money for your inspections. You need to have an appraisal done. Typically, I will notify the lender that, hey, we're not out of the option period yet, because the option period comes with a time frame. It may be 7 days, 10 days for you to take the house off the market, have the home inspected. You have all the inspectors come out, the home inspector come out. If the AC needs to be inspected, you need to have an inspector for termites. All of those people will come out and inspect the home. So you need to make sure you have that money. But I typically will notify the lender, look, we're not ordering the appraisal, because that appraisal can cost you $700, $800. And if you find something wrong with the inspection report, why would you plop down $800 for an appraisal when you end up not buying a house? So once you get out of the option period and everything's a go, meaning the seller and the buyer has agreed upon everything, either the seller agreed to pay some stuff, we got an amendment done, boom, we're good to go. Some lenders, however, because they want to be fast about getting the loan done, they want to be fast about getting things so they can close on time. But that can be an $800 fast mistake that you don't want to take a chance on. So why not get out of the option period, be complete with that, and then say, okay, lender, we're ready to go. You can go ahead and order that appraisal now, because it is done by a third party. We don't order it. The lender ends up ordering the appraisal on your behalf. So you want to go ahead and let them take care of that. So we have earnest money, we have the option fee money, we have the inspection money, we have the appraisal money, because back to back, as soon as you submit the offer, and I'm going to go over that on the next one, as soon as you submit, you got to have that option fee and earnest money ready to go. And then, of course, a survey. I always suggest that my home buyers purchase their own survey. Yes, there could be an existing survey, but that survey may not incorporate the outlying areas of the property. So if there's something wrong where you're encroaching and you have to tear a fence down and things like that, and you're not properly insured, then that's going to end up being a cost on you. So it's just best to go ahead and get your own survey and not use somebody else's existing. Sometimes they survey the wrong property, believe it or not. They've been known to go out and have a survey done and say, oh, wow, that's kind of strange. The lot you're buying or the house you're buying is sitting on this lot. It's just that the survey that they provided was actually a survey for the house that's across the street. So it's in your best interest to go ahead and get a survey done that has your name on it and it's yours. Okay, tip number 4, bank statements. This is a biggie. Make sure the bank account that you're going to use has all the money in it. Whatever that money that's in that bank account is going to be used towards your home loan transaction, because lenders are real big on you dropping in cash, chunks of money. They don't know where it came from. You don't have a paper trail. They want you to have a paper trail. Okay. So some people get married and they have all these buckets of, oh, I shouldn't say bucket. I went to a wedding. There was a wedding where they drop money all over the place and stuff like that, and there's someone to sweep it all up, and they may collect several $1,000s, and they have to put that money in the bank, but it needs to be seasoned. What seasoned mean is a minimum of 60 days or more that money, if it was cash put into the bank, it needs to have been in that bank account for a minimum of 60 days or more. Then the lender is not going to bother you. They got this thing about money laundering. They don't want people giving you all this money and then you go and buy this house. They want to know if you got an excuse as to where the money came from. I've had clients that had, say, a car accident and they got a settlement. And then, of course, there's a paper trail as to why that money was placed into their account. Maybe you have some parents that want to give you money towards purchasing a home. There's a paper trail, but there's paperwork that the parent will need to fill out stating that they're going to give a gift to that person. So all of these conversations and things will be held or had with the lender, and of course with your realtor, because you'll notice that when you start this process, there's a system to all the madness, and that's why you want to get an agent that has a team of people, because you're not going to have to wear all these different hats. There's going to be someone helping you every step of the way, so you don't get confused, because it's enough of what you have to do in terms of watching your emails and all of that stuff and staying away from spam and wire fraud. So anyway, back to that money. So just make sure that the money that's going into the account, the money is seasoned, it's been there a minimum of 60 days. If you have to pull money out of a 401k, then we need to have that discussion as well with the lender so they can know that you need to request that money ahead of time. Now, let's talk about tip number 5. That's actually the offer or the contract. Remember when I said that when you want to submit an offer, if it's just you're submitting an offer, it's 1% of the sales price if it's a resale, and then it's the option fee. Typical option fee, $100, $150, then, that's okay. It's like there's no set amount what either one of those numbers can be. But if the seller is going to take you seriously, then they're going to be expecting what the typical amount is going to be. And then as soon as your offer is accepted and we now have a full-fledged contract, then now you have to come up with 2 checks. Or sometimes the title company has a software where they'll send you an email where it's encrypted, where you can click in there and submit the earnest money and the option fee. You got like 48 hours to be in contract to submit that money over there. If you don't get it over there in time and something happens, you can run the risk of losing that earnest money. So you want to make sure that's done. And let me backtrack real quick about this lender thing. Sometimes you get these lenders that say, oh, we can close you in 10 days. A typical closing takes anywhere between 30 and 45 days. My suggestion to you is to utilize the entire 30 to 45 days, depending on which loan you get, whether it's FHA or conventional. And the reason I want you to utilize all of those days, because there are a lot of dates that's in the contract where time is of the essence. For example, let's say you get one of these lenders that say, oh, we can close you in 10 days. And the lender, while they're underwriting your file or they're looking at your file, something comes up. They need to get some documentation from you. And the documentation, it could be getting something from the IRS. They say it'll take a week to mail it to you because they're not going to fax it to you. They're not going to email it to you. It has to come snail mail. So if it has to come snail mail and it's going to take 7 days, guess what? Now it's going to take longer than 10 days to get you closed. And if you say you're going to close in 10 days and the seller is expecting you to close in 10 days, and now you go past 10 days because you're waiting on that snail mail letter from the IRS, you can lose your earnest money. So if you put down 1% of $500,000, that's $5,000. And the seller they're not obligated to offer you an extension. They don't have to give you an extension. They can go next. Let's keep it moving. And now you're out of option fee money and you're out of earnest money. So you want to be very careful with those lenders that say, oh, we can close you quick. Yeah, that's great. That's good. But if your loan is going smooth and the lender said, hey, we can close you sooner, then that's great. It's best to be safe than to be sorry. So you want to look out for those lenders that said that they can close you faster. That's great. But if something happens, can you guarantee me that I won't lose my earnest money? Can you guarantee me I won't lose my option fee money? They can't guarantee you that. So be careful. All right. Tip number 6. Let's talk about closing costs. A lot of times people get this confused, especially when they're putting down, say, 3.5% for FHA or 5% for conventional. There's non-conforming conventional loans, which are the higher ticket loans, which require more down payment, minimum 10% and higher. But let's stick with the 5% down. You do have some zero down conventional loans, but a lot of times when there's zero down, like a VA loan or USDA, it requires zero money down. And most people think, okay, I'm done, it's zero down. No, you have closing costs. So let's go with scenario number 1. If it's zero down, it's zero down plus closing costs in your escrows. What does that mean? It means that if it's a VA loan, they're not requiring any down payment. The closing costs are going to be your lender closing costs. Say the origination fee. You have to get an appraisal done. You had to pay for a survey, right? They're going to do the escrow for your taxes and insurance and the home warrant. All of these are going to be costs that's going to be costs that have to be paid at closing. And then you have the title company fees. We don't have attorneys in Texas. We have title companies. So the title company is going to have their list of fees. They got to file all your documents with the courthouse and things like that. They're going to have the title commitment. So they're going to have their set of fees as well. And then you have to set up an escrow account. They're going to escrow for 3 months of taxes and 2 months of insurance. And then, of course, all of that is going to come up to your closing costs, because sometimes people will have down payment assistance help and they go, well, isn't the down payment assistance program going to pay for my survey? Are they going to pay for my earnest money or my... No, they don't pay for any of that. That's your upfront out-of-pocket fees. We talked about that on tip number 3. So remember that. So back to the closing costs. Whenever a lender is pre-approving you, whatever amount they max you out at, you want to know what your total closing costs are. Total. So if you're getting a conventional loan, what's the total amount that I have to pay to seal this deal, to finish it out? I mean, what's the down payment amount plus all the closing costs from the lender, the closing costs from the title company, my escrows. What is the absolute bottom line? Because sometimes those lenders will give you what your closing costs are, and then they'll tell you the down payment. Or if there's no down payment, you don't know that there's closing costs, and it can be very confusing. And then once they give you the closing costs, now you want to know, well, what is my monthly payment? What is my interest rate? So you're going to get an estimated closing disclosure that's going to help you understand what your monthly payments are going to be. And they're going to break down what all those costs are. And then they're going to say, to finish this deal, to buy this house completely, you're done, one and done. This is the total amount. And that's what you need to know. And it's an estimate, because once the real numbers start coming in, meaning once you start shopping for homeowners insurance, once those numbers start coming in, once the taxes, depending on the community you buy in, you're going to get a different tax rate. So or different HOA. So they're going to calculate all those real numbers at closing, and they normally estimate the estimation. I'm sorry, is higher. So when you get to closing, it's a little bit lower unless you decide to buy a house that's more expensive. So just remember when we're talking about your closing costs, you want to get the total amount. So let's go over to tip number 7. Again, I kind of wrapped that up into that. Actually, tip 6 was the earnest money option fee, down payment, and all of that good stuff. Under that tip number 6, when I was talking about down payment, the conventional loan is 5% down. The FHA is 3.5% down. And then we said VA is 0, USDA is 0% down. And then if we talked about tip number 8, you have private mortgage insurance, which is also included with your closing costs. I could have, I guess, lumped all of those together, but we have closing costs, escrows, private mortgage insurance. That comes into place when we talk about number 8 on the private mortgage insurance. People go, well, how do I get rid of it? Private mortgage insurance comes into place when you don't put 20% down or you don't have 20% equity in your home. If you decide that you're going to put 20% down, then you don't have to pay private mortgage insurance. And sometimes that amount can be almost $200. It could be $170. Even if you have great, perfect credit, it's still going to be an extra $150 or extra $170 that you have to pay. Again, it's a certain calculation that they do, and it depends on your loan amount. There's a couple of ways to get rid of that. You can either do old school, where you do what is called a purchase money second or second lien, meaning you get an 80% first lien from one lender, and they go, oh, wow, this is beautiful. This person is putting 20% down. It's going to look and feel like you're putting 20% down, but you're really not, because you're going to go over to lender number 2, and you're going to get a second lien for 15%, and then you bring 5%. So the way that looks is it's an 80% first, a 15% second, and then 5% down is what you're going to put. Or it can be 80% first, 10% second, and 10% down. Now you can pay that 10% off or that 15% off at any time. It's amortized over 30 years, but they give you 15 years to pay it. And it's normally a smaller amount. The interest rate is a little bit higher, but when you add the first lien with the second lien, the monthly payment is minus the private mortgage insurance versus you getting the other loan that has the mortgage insurance included. And the only way you can get this type of loan is if your credit scores are at least a 700 or higher. I haven't checked lately. I don't know what it is now, but it may be 680. It used to be, it could be a 680, 670. Would have to, depending on the lender that you use. But that strategy typically works pretty well, and it eliminates the fact that you have to pay that PMI. Another way is you just pay extra on principal until you pay it down within 80%. You have to notify the lender it's paid down within 80%, and they will also either request an appraisal or they will do a new evaluation to see if that loan is down to that 80% mark where they can eliminate that mortgage insurance. So that's just another way to do and take care of that. Now, let's go over tip number 9, inspections. Now, if we're talking new home construction, you typically want to do the inspection a couple of days before you do your first walkthrough. Because when you do your first walkthrough, you're just doing taping. You're doing blue taping or yellow taping, whatever color tape they give you. You're going to be looking in the cupboards. You're going to be looking, believe it or not, when you go into the pantry underneath, because sometimes they forget to paint underneath. You're going to be checking in during the daytime, because sometimes you can see the paint discoloration on the walls and stuff. A lot of times they don't put those stoppers in. I have like a little check sheet that I like to give to the buyer when you go there so that you can see and check these things to make sure that the builder corrects them. So when your inspector goes, before you do your first walkthrough, what you do is bring that inspection report with you so that the things that you blue taped or yellow taped, you give them that report, and now they're going to fix those things on your final walkthrough. We'll go over when you'll get to that final walkthrough. So tip number 10, we're talking about your clear to close. Oh, real quick, back to the inspection on tip number 9. When we're talking about tip number 9 about your inspection, if it's a resale, you will do your final walkthrough before you go to the title company to close. That's all that does, except for when there's new construction, because they're building your house or the house is built, you want to make sure that they painted, everything is, in its proper place, and the paint is thick and it looks good, and that the baseboards, all of that good stuff. That's what you want to make sure of. Now let's talk about the infamous clear to close. Now this is the favorite part that I like. All right. As far as I'm concerned, the clear to close is the most important part of the home buying process. Yes, you heard me. It's the most important part. Some people seem to think that it's the pre-approval, and the pre-approval is just formality. It's basically allowing you to submit an offer to the seller, because if you don't have a pre-approval, they're not going to even look at you. They're not even going to entertain your offer. You can have, I want to hurry up and rush you. You could be paying cash. They are not going to look at your offer. I shouldn't say cash, because with cash, you're going to have a letter. It's going to be a letter from your lender that's going to be verified that the funds are at least in the account for you to make the purchase. But if you're getting a loan, you have to submit a pre-approval. Now, the reason I say the clear to close is the most important part of this whole process is because if you do not get a clear to close, guess what? You ain't closing. If you do not get a clear to close from that underwriter, you will not close. And this is where all the stress and the fighting and the arguments and the miscommunication happens if you don't have a good lender or realtor that's understanding how this process works. The buyer ends up fighting with their agent, and then the agent ends up fighting with the listing agent. The listing agent ends up fighting with the seller. And why? Because the underwriter, right before they're going to finalize everything and send everything over to the closing department so they can communicate with the title company to call you to set a date to close, they're going to do three things. They're going to do three important things. They're going to do a verification of employment to make sure you're gainfully employed. They're going to do, they need an updated bank statement to make sure you didn't go furniture shopping, right? Or I shouldn't say that. The bank statement is to make sure that you didn't put any cash in there. Nobody gave you a chunk of cash money and you just dropped it into that account. Now they're going to do a soft credit pull to make sure you didn't go furniture shopping. Yes, because sometimes, I don't know why it always happens that when someone's buying a really big house and these furniture stores have this no interest for 3 years and it's only this weekend only. If you don't get it this weekend, guess what? You're not going to see this deal again. And so what the person does is they go out because the furniture store told them, look, we're not even going to start making you make monthly payments until later. But when that lender does that soft credit pull, and they see that you went to the furniture store because they did a credit pull as well, they want to know what is your monthly payments supposed to be when you start paying. And when you tell them that, they're going to need to calculate that into your ratios, and it could either bump you into being not approved anymore, or maybe you have really, really low debt to income ratios and you'll be okay, but it's going to delay your closing. Okay. That's why you don't set up movers. You don't take vacation time. You don't set any of those things up until you get a CTC. What is that? Clear to close. You don't get a clear to close, then you ain't closing. Now, that whole process takes a couple of days. So let's say the underwriter issues you a clear to close. Oh, let me go back real quick. The thing that I have with the verification of employment example is I've had somebody retire, have a retirement party, bought a brand new house. And when the underwriter was getting ready to clear them out, their income was decreased because they retired. And guess what? Yep. If you guess they didn't get that house, you're right. It took them 6 months to build it. And in the end, instead of them waiting to retire after they move in, they retired before. So they didn't get the house. Then the last example on that verification of employment is I had someone to lose their job. They got laid off. And they go, no worries. I'll just get another job and then we'll be okay. I go, no, you don't understand. You ain't closing. Because once they find out that you're not gainfully employed, they're not going to give you that house loan. And sure enough, they did not get the loan. It was sad, but it happens. So the lender is going to do three things, or the underwriter. They're going to do a verification of employment. They want an updated bank statement to make sure you didn't dump a whole bunch of cash in that account. And then they want to do a soft credit pull to make sure you didn't go furniture shopping. Okay. So remember that. Now let's go to tip number 11. This is the final closing disclosure. And this is when they've issued you the clear to close, and you can do the happy dance. Hey, happy dance, right? Now you can order your movers. Now you can take some time off from work and all of this good stuff because you got to clear the close. Title company is going to call you, ask you what time you want to close. But before all of that happens, and this is why we like to have it go smoothly, right? Before all of that happens, if you understand the time frame, then you won't stress, because I don't like my people stressing. You won't stress, you won't get bent out of shape, because when the underwriter issues the clear to close, now they have to send your file over to the closing department. And the closing department can take 2 days. I know they can do it within 24 hours, or they can even do it in a couple of hours, but I want you to be thinking mentally it's going to take 2 days, okay? When the closing department finish dotting the I's and crossing the T's and putting your name on all the paperwork and documentation, they're going to communicate with the title company. Now, once they communicate with the title company, they're going to be sending your docs over to the title company. So now they're going to be balancing all those numbers. Oh, you got homeowners insurance and stuff like that. Yeah. So once all of that stuff is straightened out, that could take another day. So it could be 2 to 3 days before you actually get over to the title company to sign your paperwork. So don't get bent out of shape. What's taking so long and why this, why that? So sometimes when it gets to the end and it's like stuck in underwriting, it's like, what is everybody waiting for? We're waiting on it to clear the close. And once you get to clear the close, then you can do cartwheels, you can do the happy dance. And then in the beginning, most people think that once they get an offer accepted and they have a contract, it's crickets. You don't hear anything for 7 to 10 days. Say, what's going on? When the underwriter is working on your file, they're vetting you, they're verifying everything. And then when it kicks out of underwriting, now they have a conditional loan approval. They need appraisal. They need survey. They need divorce decree. They need tax. They'll tell you a whole laundry list. Or you got great credit. Everything is cool. Debt ratios are good. Maybe they need 4 things: an appraisal, a survey, title commitment, and that's it. Updated bank statement. That's all. Nice, clean, beautiful file. So you could be good to go. So I just want you to know that the clear to close is the most important part of the transaction. There have been many buyers that had been stuck. I've seen them stuck at the title company waiting for their loan docs to come over. And the one question I ask them is, did your lender send you a clear to close? Did y'all get a clear to close? And they go, what is that? Oh, you didn't get a clear to close? Because if you didn't get a clear to close, remember what I said? You ain't closing. So that's just how it works. Now, the final closing disclosure, that's tip number 11. This is a really, really good document to look at before you get to the closing department, because most people don't really get to see this document until they get to the closing table. Well, what is that? Those are the final calculations of everything. Those are the real numbers, the true numbers, the factual numbers with all the information on there. And it's just going to be a summary. It's going to give you your total that you're supposed to bring as in the form of a cashier's check, or you're going to wire the money over. So it's going to give you the grand total. You're going to get all your credits. If the seller is supposed to give you a credit for something because of doing the inspections, they give you a credit for $5,000 or $3,000. You're going to look for, if the builder is giving you credit, you're going to see all of those credits on that closing disclosure. So it would be a good idea to kind of take a look at what one of those look like so that you can have an idea. So that would help. And then, of course, tip number 12, the title company. Remember when I said we don't use attorneys, we use title companies. Now, when we go to the title company, that's where all the magic and all the action happens. You're going to close on your new home. You are going to get the keys. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be great. And now the final thing I want to say to you is, well, how much would all of this cost me? Because we got all these new rules, remember, with the National Association of Realtors, and you probably wonder, how much is all this going to cost me? You know, well, what you end up doing is you end up negotiating and talking with your real estate agent. If it's a new home sales, you'll talk with the builder to see if the builder is going to be paying to allow your realtor to help represent you like they used to do in the past. But again, everything is negotiable. So don't panic, don't freak out. But even though those new laws are in place, it still doesn't stop you from picking a really good realtor to help you negotiate on those things, to help these things to get paid for on your behalf. So just make sure you pick a good realtor from that website that I told you about. And then also another couple of tips I want to give you, it has to do with wire fraud. If you're going to be sending over a large sum of money, you want to make sure that all the players that's on your team, on the team that that's put in place by your realtor, that you know their email addresses, because sometimes you'll get someone that'll sneak an email address in there and they'll just tweak one thing and say, oh, if you wire your money ahead of time, we'll give you a discount. Instead of wiring us 150,000, you can only send us 125. And if you wire your money like that because you didn't know that there could be a possibility of wire fraud, their money is going to be overseas, it's going to be gone, and you'll never, ever, never, ever see it again. So be very careful of your emails. Then, of course, after you close, you can file for your homestead exemption. You get a 20%, in most cases, depends, you get a 20% discount. You can only get a 20% discount on homestead properties only. That's only one property. It has to be your primary residence. And then just know that filing for your homestead exemption is free. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You're going to be getting spam mail, junk mail, everybody saying, hey, don't forget to file for your homestead exemption. We can do it for you for $125, or we can do it for you for $80. It's free, people. You do not have to pay for it. So that's all I have for you. This video can be much longer than what it is. Thank you for staying with me and listening to these tips. And I hope they help you, especially if you're relocating to the great state of Texas. So I look forward to seeing you on a video soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe. If you want to get a copy of this guide of all these things that I just went over, just put in the comments guide, and then I'll go ahead and I'll send you a copy of that. Okay, bye.